Hello, everyone, and welcome to the movie show. I'm your host, Tyler Calkins, and today we're going to be doing a movie review for The Irishman. This is the Martin Scorsese directed, Netflix produced epic Oscar contender. We're going to start with some non-spoiler stuff. If I dive into spoilers, I will give a warning like I always do, and then put up, the flash, so that way if you haven't seen the movie, you can check out, go watch the film, and then come back afterward. This is on Netflix, and most people have Netflix, so as I've probably mentioned in my other Netflix reviews, most of us have Netflix. Check it out on your own leisure. The nice part about the fact that it's on Netflix, and really what's a positive piece of that, is this movie has been spoken about in all the trades, is that it's 3.5 hours long. This thing is a long film. It feels like it's two movies packed into one film, and the running time can kind of justify that. But the reason that it is running so long, and what I appreciate, is that it's so ambitious. It really does cover a character's almost their entire life, from like young adulthood all the way to basically their death. I appreciate the ambition that Martin Scorsese has to come up with a story and direct such a story like that. Also, it's Steve Zalian, who's been nominated for Best, Adapted Screenplay, also doing, some good heavy lifting, telling that entire story. But I appreciate the ambitiousness of Martin Scorsese to direct such a film, but I also appreciate Netflix ambitions and being able to, being willing to put up the budget and have this film be made. So I really appreciate both Martin Scorsese and Netflix for being gutsy enough to make such an epic film. And it really is epic. It covers an entire timeline of this, Frank Sheeran's life, played by Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro does a fantastic job throughout the film. He's earnest. He's a working man. It's almost like it's showing like the story of like the working man's mobster, where he's just a guy who was looking for a job and trying to help his family, and he just kind of stumbled into this world of mobster kind of life. And inherently he's trying to be a good person, but just the work that he does makes him a bad guy to some extent. And it very much to some extent. I mean, he's a murderer. He's a killer. He's a hitman. So it kind of shows how the tolls that takes on him, personally to some extent, how he's trying to raise his family, but at the same time, it also shows how his family's affected by such things as well. The performances in this film are really phenomenal. You've got, Robert De Niro playing, this Frank Sheeran character, but you've also got two really great performances, and Al Pacino playing Jimmy Hoffa. I'll start there. He does a really great job of portraying this enthusiasm, this charisma that comes with such of almost political figure. Jimmy Hoffa being the president of the union. So he really does a great job of bringing that charisma, but also bringing like a level of crazy to the role, where like, his ego overtakes, kind of logic to some extent, or I'm not going to let somebody push me to the side. So really fascinating stuff by Al Pacino, in his role as Jimmy Hoffa. But really, who takes the cake throughout the entire movie? And man, he has not missed a step. Joe Pesci coming back to play Russell Bufalino. I mean, he's phenomenal. He is absolutely fantastic. Joe Pesci gives a performance that is terrifying, almost to the point of being like almost Marlon Brando levels in The Godfather. He's actually that kind of menacing and terrifying, and it's subtle, and it's like little nods of the eyes. Like, he just does this fantastic. He has not missed a single step in any of the work that he's doing. Joe Pesci is phenomenal as Russell Bufalino, and he really does a good job of playing that mentor to Robert De Niro throughout the entire film, helping to build him along. They meet early on in the course of Frank Sheeran and Robert De Niro's life, and then they're just together throughout the entire time. It also is a really fascinating situation where you see Frank Sheeran trying to figure out how he's going to be able to build his life, not just working with Russell Bufalino, but also working with Jimmy Hoffa. And it shows kind of his like dual paths that he's taking, where he's building up himself and he's excelling in his career, utilizing these two different pathways. So really great work in the writing on that. And again, it does a good job to flesh that out. With this thing being 3.5 hours long, you really get a good telling of the entire story. While I did have to set aside an entire morning to kind of make sure that I could watch this movie in one sitting, because I wanted to do that. I hate to break up films. It doesn't run too long. It doesn't feel like you're like, oh my god, this is running ridiculously long. It really does a good job of the pacing of that 3.5 hours. So I think Martin Scorsese does a great job of still keeping you interested throughout the entire film, even though it is an incredibly long runtime, like Lord of the Rings runtime. Again, really fantastic performances. One thing I'll mention in non-spoiler is the Anna Paquin controversy is really ridiculous. The fact that she didn't have many lines. Her character in the film is a very quiet person, and that's kind of, to me, what explains explains why she doesn't have a lot of speaking role. And at some point in the movie, we'll get into a spoiler territory of why she doesn't do that. So, I mean, to me, that controversy is stupid. I understand why this movie has been nominated for the Oscars that it is. It really is an epic film, and really congratulations to Netflix on coming out with this year. Not just for this movie, but for them to have A Marriage Story and Two Popes. They've really got quite the trifecta this year of Oscar-worthy films. Just really fantastic movies on their part, with really fantastic performances by the actors within those movies. Robert De Niro does a really great job in this movie. Unfortunately, he has not been nominated for Best Actor, and I felt like maybe he should have been. Not even maybe. I feel like he really should have been, considering it really shows the portrayal of that character throughout his entire life. However, maybe the Academy feels like he's played this role before, and this isn't any better than previous roles that he's had, maybe in Goodfellas or Casino, so they'd rather just, since it's a retread, they're not really trying to celebrate it, and whatever if that's the case. That said, there is 2 nominated performances for this film, and that's going to be Al Pacino as Jimmy Hoffa and Joe Pesci as Russell Bufalino, and it's absolutely deserved because their performances are just fantastic throughout this movie. It really carries you throughout the entire film, especially anytime Joe Pesci's on screen. He's just electric and terrifying, and he's a mobster. You don't know what he's going to do next. It's really, really great stuff. I love also, too, that this film has been nominated for Best Picture, as it should be, although I think it's not going to win. I don't think it really has the possibility of doing that, especially because the Academy, I think, just isn't okay with Netflix winning Best Picture yet, because they're just so driven by the theater kind of setting, and they want to push the theater experience, not the streaming experience. So I think the Academy is not going to come around in that sense, but it's still great to see that it's been nominated for Best Picture, because it absolutely should be. That being said, I am going to dive into a little bit of spoilers now, so if you have not seen the film, go ahead, go watch it on Netflix. You're going to have to clear an afternoon because it is long, so go check it out on Netflix and then come back when you're done so we can continue this conversation. I can't wait. That said, this is the spoiler warning, so check out if you're not ready, okay? Going into it. So here's some of the greater parts of this movie to me. And I don't really need to dive into many spoilers because I think people should just experience this movie. But what I find fascinating is that you've got this character, Frank Sheeran, and basically he was in the war, he was in the military, and he was a good soldier, and he was very good at what he did. And he kind of parlayed that into his new role because he was working as a truck driver for a meat company. So then he started to kind of steal that meat and sell it on the side and kind of make a little bit of extra money. And he got involved in kind of the mob world, and the mob world started to incorporate him, give him more jobs, give him more little tasks to do, and eventually ends up becoming a hitman for them and to him, it's kind of expresses basically he's getting an order and he's following through with an order. So to me, that's kind of what spells this is the working man in the mob. He's just trying to be a working stiff, make money for his family, but he's wrapped up in this world that gets him into serious trouble, almost like a reverse Rocky, which is because again, I don't find Frank Sheeran to be an admirable character. He's a murderer, he's a hitman, but you see kind of what Martin Scorsese is trying to tell with the story is that he's like the working man's mobster, the working man's hitman. So I find that to be fascinating and well done within the film. It also shows the story of how ultimately it all falls apart for such a bad guy. Like he's trying to keep it together for his family and make money for them, but ultimately his daughter ends up not talking to him. And that's the thing that I was talking about earlier with Anna Paquin. There's that story of she only has 7 lines throughout the movie. Well, the entire character's, her entire character is that she doesn't talk a lot. She only lights up and is beaming when she's around Jimmy Hoffa, who's like a nice guy to her and isn't like this mobster killer guy. So that's the only time she lights up. And specifically, there's a plot point within the film where later on she stops talking to Robert De Niro. So of course she does not have a lot of lines throughout the film. I find that whole controversy to be stupid and really doesn't make sense for the movie. I love that Anna Paquin was in it. I feel like maybe she was miscast. If you're going to cast that good of an actress, maybe cast a lesser known actress so there's not this controversy. But that said, the whole controversy is ridiculous because it's non-existent. Her character isn't supposed to talk. That's why she doesn't have a lot of lines. Scorsese directs the hell out of this movie. Really amazing work there. Ultimately, what happens is Jimmy Hoffa gets in trouble. He's being taken down by the Kennedys, and people kind of know that story a little bit. But essentially, when he gets out of jail, he's trying to get back to be president of the union. And basically, the new powers that be are like, hey, ultimately it's not going to work out. Maybe it's time for you to retire. And Jimmy Hoffa and all his ego is like, I'm not going to retire. I'm not going silently. I'm going to do what I want to do. And ultimately this causes conflict with the mob, essentially. And Russell Bufalino, Joe Pesci decides, all right, well, it's time to whack him. and he enlists, hitman Robert De Niro to come in and whack his friend Jimmy Hoffa. It's amazing because, yes, Robert De Niro does struggle with it, but like a good soldier, he follows through and he ends up killing Jimmy Hoffa. And it's an amazing build up to that. The only thing that's unfortunate is they really showed that in the trailer, which so you kind of know the moment leading up to it and it shows it. But again, Jimmy Hoffa ends up dying, so that you know where the end of the story is going eventually. What's sad throughout the film, and as I was alluding to before, is that while Anna Paquin doesn't talk to him, you realize that even though he's tried to keep his family together this entire time doing these terrible things, ultimately by the end of his life, nobody visits him. Nobody cares for him, not his family, not his kids, because he's such a bad guy and he's such a murderer. So, and nobody wants to kind of interact with him. So even though you try to do your best to keep your family together, you've done these heinous things and now you have nobody, and basically he kind of dies alone. It's really kind of, sad for his character. Something I found funny throughout the film was that it's really kind of shows that mob life. You get involved, it's bad news for you, because basically every time they introduce a character, they would explain how that character was ended up assassinated later on in their life for whatever reason, either to keep secret or, because they were worried about spilling secrets, all that kind of stuff. It just shows you that kind of that mob life really does not get you anywhere. So I appreciate that this movie wasn't trying to glamorize that mob life. It was just showing the kind of the cruelty of what it was and the grimness of what it is. Really phenomenal movie. I suggest that people go and watch it, stream it on Netflix, because it really is a good movie. It is a long one, so I mean that would be maybe my knocks on it. Oh, another thing that I wanted to bring up was that for the most part, I thought the de-aging was really, really well done. Some of the scenes were just a little off, but not to like, oh my goodness, it took me out of the movie. But most of the de-aging I thought was really well done, not just for Robert De Niro, but also for Joe Pesci. Just really amazing work by the special effects team at Netflix. And Netflix should be really, proud of their accomplishment, not just with those other two films that I mentioned earlier, The Two Popes and A Marriage Story, but really with The Irishman, because it really is a true Martin Scorsese epic with fantastic visual effects and great production and production design and really great cinematography. And just Netflix has really been killing it this year as far as stepping up their prestige film game, and it really shows. And it's really, with 3 phenomenal films this year, they should be so proud of themselves. But that being said, those are my thoughts on The Irishman. What are your thoughts? Are you a big fan of Netflix streaming? Are you worried that Netflix streaming is kind of taking over that theater experience, or do you appreciate being able to stream a movie at home? To me, I feel like this experience was great because you were able to be at home, and at 3.5 hours in a theater might be a little bit too much. But what are your thoughts? Comment down below. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell to the top. That way you don't miss any of my new content. As always, thank you for watching. We'll see you soon.